This was a very sympathetic piece on a man who dismembers living 20-week and above babies.
Yeah.
And for that to have been a sympathetic portrayal shows the power of good writing and good storytelling.
Right.
And I think we all need to keep that in mind because we need to change the narrative.
I am yours, I am yours, I am yours, send me, Lord. I am yours, I am yours, I am yours.
Welcome to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast, a podcast designed to equip, encourage, and challenge you in pro-life ministry, and always with a focus on the gospel. Stay tuned.
I felt your passion, I've touched your heart. Use me, Lord, use me, Lord.
Welcome back to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast. We appreciate you guys joining us. And as always, we'd appreciate if you guys would share this podcast with others. We're going to share our email addresses at the end of this episode so you can reach out to us because, as always, we'd like for you to reach out. If you have any questions, if you have any other topics that you'd like for us to cover, suggestions for future podcasts, we'd love to do those. And the podcast episode that we're going to do today is going to be based on someone reaching out with some questions about sidewalk outreach in their area. Just real quick, I'll introduce myself. We've tried to do that in the most recent episodes just because there's some new people that are coming on and listening. So my name is Daniel Parks. I'm the director or the West Coast Regional Shepherd for Love Life. So I oversee our efforts on the West Coast. Even though I'm on the East Coast, I'm actually out on the West Coast a lot. I travel back and forth. And I'm joined by Vicki Cassiorg.
Hey there, everyone. And I am a sidewalk missionary here in Charlotte. I've been doing this almost a decade.
Yeah.
And these podcasts for about 2 years.
Yeah.
With Daniel.
And so, to toot our own horns and to let you guys know that we're like super official and we know everything about sidewalk ministry.
Absolutely.
We've been doing this for 25 combined years.
Yeah.
Right?
Long time.
And we're super humble about that.
We
right? No, we are super humble. Like, even though we've been doing this for a while, combined 25 years experience, we're still learning stuff like every day. Every time we're out there's something new. We get to interact with you guys that are listening, and you throw out suggestions to us and questions to us, and we learn stuff from you guys. So to be honest, like, we are humbled to be able to serve you guys in this way and to speak into your situation, speak into your city and the sidewalk outreach ministry there. But we're also, we realize that maybe if you view us as experts, you've been duped because we pretend to be experts. We play experts on a podcast.
In a ministry like this, there just are no real experts. There is always something that is going to throw you for a loop pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Every day you walk out there.
Yeah, and that's why I always say in the trainings that we do and stuff, it's like, if you want to know, I call it the super duper top secret trick to being effective on the sidewalk.
Right.
You know what it is, Vicki?
Be on the sidewalk?
No, that's not it. Nice try, but that was wrong. The super duper top secret tip to be effective on the sidewalk.
Oh, be in the Lord. Be in the Word. How about
Walk with Jesus.
Amen.
Walk with Jesus.
Amen.
And that includes being in prayer, being in the Word.
Yeah.
But we do think that we have some value to add to you guys. We do think we can take some of our experiences and just share them on this podcast. That's what we intend to do. So in this episode, I'll let you introduce the topic, Vicki.
Okay, well, this did come from a counselor who is working or serving at a facility where they only do late-term abortions.
Yeah.
And I didn't know there was such a facility. It's in Boulder, Colorado, and a relatively famous abortionist, Warren Hearn. Infamous, that's a better word. Warren Hearn is his name, and I guess the LA Times recently wrote an article on him. And then I believe the missionary saw that article and found out, wow, this is the facility where I'm going to be serving as a sidewalk missionary or counselor. And so she sent us the article that the LA Times wrote and asked if we were familiar with this, sent us a rebuttal from a pro-life.
I think it was
magazine.
live action.
It
maybe,
was
or
live
something like that.
action, and then said, given that this is only late-term abortions, would this alter how you would speak to the women and your strategy? And we answered separately, Daniel and I, in letters. I've written an article that includes roughly both of our answers, a little bit different. In many ways we agreed, but we had some slight differences. But also I did a little bit further research. I did read both of these articles. I recommend everybody read them. And then I did a little bit further research on why people come for a later term abortion, because that's important to know.
Yeah.
And that's how this article developed and then this podcast developed, was trying to not only adequately answer that missionary's question, but then someone else wrote us in a very similar situation and said, what would you say that maybe is unique from what you would say to someone in a early term abortion? So that's how it developed.
Yeah, and we had talked about this a couple of episodes ago when we talked about getting in the mindset. Mm-hmm. The encouragement in that podcast was we need to try the best we can to enter into the mindset of the women that we're ministering to so that we can understand their perspective and accurately speak into their situation.
Right.
I mentioned this a little bit, kind of the interaction that we had with the lady there in Colorado, and that the mindset could be different.
Right.
So this is a more in-depth look at that. Like, what is the mindset of a woman that's coming for a late-term abortion? Yeah. How would we tweak our language, or what would we focus on? Because, depending on the situation, again, whether it's a late-term abortion or whatever the situation might be. I mean, I'm even looking at the situation where if you're talking to someone who's taking the abortion pill versus someone who has a surgical abortion or is going in for a surgical abortion, there's a general framework is the 3 talking points, but there's a couple of things that I'm going to say to the abortion pill person that I wouldn't say to the surgical abortion person, and vice versa, right?
Correct.
And so there's a couple things to consider, and as we're talking about late-term abortions, there's a couple things to consider in this area.
Yeah, so in that article, one of the things that right off the bat, the article where I tried to find out the mindset of the woman, so tried to find out facts about late-term abortions and the mindset of the women. Yeah. Late-term abortion is kind of a term that they don't recommend you even use,
right? Because
it doesn't really have a lot of meaning. What is a late-term abortion? Yeah. So in this article, it talked about abortions after 20 weeks.
Right, yeah. So it's essentially third trimester abortions,
essentially,
right?
Essentially. This is a little bit before the third term, but most abortion centers, I don't even know if it's most. I know the abortion centers here in Charlotte are up to about 20 weeks. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people are going to be coming in, serving at, although most abortions occur in the first trimester.
Yeah.
But there are women that come in that third trimester. And I think that most people believe, and I think you mentioned, that it's usually due to fetal abnormality of some sort. But I wanted to find out specifically why people come for late-term abortion. And this article, I think it was really interesting. Okay. Why the main reasons, and it was a study, and of the main reasons why women over 20 weeks come for an abortion. Yeah. And they may have faced more than one of the following issues, which I'm going to go over, but they reported facing these issues, and this is why they were coming for an abortion.
Yeah. Yeah. So they delayed the decision to abort because of these particular reasons. Okay.
Correct. So first of all, the first, item was any barrier. If there was any barrier present, 31% of the women said that there was some sort of a barrier.
Okay. And a barrier between them and having the abortion?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So now they don't specifically in this article ever list fetal abnormality or a health risk with the mom. Okay. But the article did point out that those are both main issues for people in late-term abortions. Not necessarily the only issue, maybe not an issue at all. Yeah. but those do occur. And a question that came to my mind right away was, why wait if there's a maternal risk? Why did they wait?
Yeah.
And one of the things the article pointed out is some maternal risk don't show up till the third term,
Right.
which I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah.
High blood pressure,
Preeclampsia,
all those sorts of things. So it's good to know that. But any barrier, 31% of them said that there was some sort of a barrier preventing them from getting an earlier abortion. 40% of them said raising money for the procedure and related costs. Now that's interesting because a third-term abortion is thousands of dollars.
Right. Yeah.
Very expensive. So that means they couldn't even afford less expensive abortion and had to go about somehow raising the money.
Yeah.
40%. Not knowing about the pregnancy, 20%. Again, a lot of us will look at that and say, what? They don't know they're 20 weeks pregnant and they don't know it? I'll tell you, there was one time I went on the RV. There was a woman didn't even know she was pregnant on our mobile ultrasound RV. She didn't even know she was pregnant. She was 32 weeks.
Yeah.
So it happens, folks.
It does happen.
20% of them didn't know about the pregnancy.
Yeah.
By the way, I want you all to keep in mind, as I'm listing all these things, these are not fetal abnormality or maternal risk. These are the same things that we sometimes hear from the first term abortions.
Yeah, no doubt.
Difficulty securing insurance coverage, 41%. Now that one made me gag because that means that some people do get insurance coverage for an abortion.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, you need to know that. That's kind of sad, isn't it? That insurance pays for abortions. 40%, this is key. I think this might be the most important one. Trouble deciding about the abortion, 40%. That means 40% of the women coming for a late-term abortion still have conflict in their heart. We know we can speak to that.
Yeah.
38% did not know where to go for an abortion. That floors me.
Yeah.
That's a big percentage. There's so many abortion centers advertised. They're all over the place, but 38% don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Difficulty getting to an abortion facility, 27%. Disagreeing about the abortion with the man involved, 20%.
Yeah.
So while fetal abnormality, maternal risk are big reasons for a late-term abortion, they are hardly the only reason, sometimes not even the most important reason, and that's very important for people who are serving at those facilities to know. You can speak to all these other issues, not just to the fetal abnormality and maternal risk.
Yeah.
So, this abortionist, Warren Hearn, something that I really spoke to me as I read that article, and I would recommend that everybody read that article. They present him so sympathetically that he comes across as a victim and a hero.
Yeah. No, of course. He's a victim, not the babies that he kills through abortion.
Exactly.
And he's a hero because he gives a woman her life back or whatever, however they deem that.
He's fighting for these poor women.
Right.
And the article never once mentions the murdered babies.
Of course.
But what struck me as a writer, and I think it will strike you, Daniel, because you are always talking about the value of stories. This was a very sympathetic piece on a man who dismembers living 20-week and above babies.
Yeah.
And for that to have been a sympathetic portrayal shows the power of good writing and good storytelling.
Right.
And I think we all need to keep that in mind because we need to change the narrative. In our stories are powerful.
Yeah.
Our stories can equally paint the truth of what happens to that baby.
Yeah.
And the devastation to the mother. And all of us need to be aware of that and how to do that well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other article, Live Action, debunks the Times piece, and I think it's important for us to read that so that we have the balance of the truth bumped up against this very well-written LA LA Times story.
Yeah.
But anyway, you gave your feedback to the missionary in Oregon, in Boulder, who wrote to us, Colorado. I'm sorry, that asked us, what do we do? And I thought your feedback was really good. So maybe you could talk about the things that you mentioned.
Yeah. So my point was that the women that we're seeing that come in for an early first trimester, even second trimester abortion are typically like, and you know it, we've seen women who come in who are amazed when we do, by God's grace, get to show them an ultrasound and they see their baby at 8, 9 weeks, got a heartbeat. They're amazed. They'll say, it's a baby, right? So there's this ability, in a sense, even though there's really no excuse for it because of the technology we have, but there's this ability to kind of disconnect themselves from the reality that they're carrying a baby because they don't yet feel that baby. It's not a clear, maybe in their bodies there's some changes, but there's not a clear change. They don't have a baby bump and that sort of thing.
Right.
When you get into, of course, the third trimester, but even like 20 weeks, we all know and have seen people who are pregnant at 20 weeks. You can see their baby.
Yeah.
You can see that baby kick. They can feel the baby kick, right? So there's no denying that it's a baby at that point. So my response was one like, we certainly can appeal to that mother and talk to her about the fact that her baby is a human being, that it's a human life. But she already knows that likely, and especially if she's already had, because when a woman does find out she's pregnant, let's say she wanted to get pregnant, but then she finds out she's pregnant with a baby that has some fetal abnormality or some issue, she's going to go for multiple ultrasounds. Like the doctor, we went through this with our twins. So we have twin girls, and they're precious. But at like 12 weeks, my wife was 12 weeks pregnant, so we found out, I think, maybe it was 9 weeks that she was having twins. About 12 weeks, my wife woke up in a pool of blood, and we thought we were losing the babies. Thought she was miscarrying. By God's grace, she did not, and they lived and continued. And about 20 weeks, she had an ultrasound, because when you have twins, they do regular ultrasound. So twins is sort of an abnormality, right? It's sort of a rare, and they consider it a high risk. Any situation where a woman has twins, it's a high risk situation for her and for the babies. And so she had multiple ultrasounds, and then at like 19 or 20 weeks, there were some issues. One of the babies was smaller than the other, and so they did an ultrasound. We ended up getting an MRI, all these things. And I'm saying that from our experience is like, you've seen multiple ultrasounds, right? If there's some issues with that baby, they're not just going to, hopefully at least, they're not just going to do one ultrasound and say, you got problems with this child, you need to have an abortion. Now, some doctors probably would do that, but for the most part, doctors, even that are pro-abortion, are probably not going to do that, especially if it's with a woman who wanted the child. Does that make sense?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So they're going to do multiple ultrasounds. So there's not, like, if I'm standing in front of a place where, they're killing babies 20 weeks and above, I would mention the ultrasound, but they've probably already had an ultrasound.
Right.
And so probably what I will mention is, you probably saw the ultrasound of your baby. Didn't you see that your child is alive? I want to remind them what they've already seen rather than, hey, come over here, we have a free ultrasound for you. Now, if I had that available, I would certainly offer that. I would always talk about a second opinion. I would always say, did you get a second opinion? To me, and I think pretty sure I responded to that email in this way, that having a high-risk doctor and a doctor that is willing to give a second opinion, to me, that would be on the top of my list to find. I would be finding that high-risk doctor.
It would, and let me just interject in there, make sure it's a pro-life high risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we know that there are high-risk doctors who will then just say, go ahead and kill the baby, because that is the least likely to be sued over response, and they're risk adverse. So be sure it's a pro-life high-risk doctor.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that I encouraged her to do is, yes, I would use the 3 talking points, and I would talk about resources and things like that. I would talk certainly about the humanity of the baby. That's where I would probably rest most of my words, in the humanity of the baby and in their accountability to God. I would be reminding them of what they've already seen, because again, they've likely already seen an ultrasound.
Right.
I would be reminding them of what they're already feeling. You feel your baby kick.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't dug into the numbers that you shared earlier about these percentages of why people come for late-term abortions. Obviously, if you do the math, the percentages don't come out to be 100%.
Because they could have more than one of those factors.
Yeah,
they
that's
might
my
have
point.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, my point is that there's probably a compounded,
right. Yes.
of each of these things, or some level of each of these things. So kind of what I'm getting at is, do people have late-term abortions because their baby has Down syndrome? Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. But probably not just because of that, right? There's probably these other things. And so trouble deciding about the abortion. So maybe they found out at 12 weeks. I mean, they can do blood tests now to find out whether or not your baby has Down syndrome, or the percentage that your baby is likely to have Down syndrome or something, which I think is absurd, but you can do that.
Right.
So you can find out at 12, 14 weeks if your baby has Down syndrome. And some of these women could have been going back and forth in their mind of whether or not they should do the abortion, getting advice from people. And then, of course, it pushes the baby on into 20 weeks.
Right,
and so it becomes potentially a third trimester abortion.
And I agree with where you're going, but I have met women who are 20 weeks pregnant who have not had any fetal or maternal abnormality or risk mentioned, but just cannot decide. They know it's wrong. They just are filled with conflict.
Yeah.
And that's why they're now entering into, the second and third trimester and still haven't done it.
Yeah.
So there can be conflict without a factor of some sort of risk or abnormality.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about the kind of the health risk of the woman, especially when they're in, the 24 to 28 week, really up into 28 when you get closer to 30 weeks. Babies have been born at 24 weeks, 26 weeks that have survived.
Yeah.
Now, it's not, of course, the best scenario, but you would have to ask yourself, okay, if the woman has preeclampsia and she's 25 weeks, 24 weeks along, why would they abort the child? Why would they kill the child and then have the child delivered? Because wouldn't the process generally be the same? You can leave the child alive and deliver the child. Do you have to kill the child and then deliver the child to stop the symptoms of preeclampsia? And you don't.
Right.
And so to me, it's like it doesn't make sense. Why not just deliver the child? Is it that this person's looking for a justification to kill the child?
Yeah.
So that to me doesn't make sense. And again, I know that's I want to say this and be kind of careful in what I'm saying, but no one goes about to have a late-term abortion or, later in the second trimester, in third trimester abortion, and does it kind of on a whim, right? It's pretty well thought out for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And
it's
not
a
just
lot of money.
Yeah.
It is a big expense.
Yeah. When you're getting into the third trimester, you're talking like $10,000 for the abortion procedure.
Right.
And so there's got to be a compounded amount of things going on.
Right.
And things that are, similar, but maybe even more traumatic, more stressful than people that have an early term abortion.
Yeah.
And so understanding that we see it all the time. We see women walking into the Latrobe Abortion Center, other abortion centers. Most of the abortion centers we minister at are going to be 20 weeks in before, like you said.
Right.
And we see people going in flipping us off. It's not a baby,
Right.
I don't imagine you see a lot of that at these late-term abortion facilities. I don't imagine you see a lot of people coming out, getting in your face. I don't imagine you do. Now, I will say, I'll put it on you guys who reach out at those abortion facilities. Maybe you do see that a lot. Maybe the attitude is different, but I'm imagining an attitude that's more somber, that's more broken. And so there's a way to reach out to those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that is a very important point that you just raised, because I think there may be doctors who just think the simpler thing to do than delivering an early baby is to just tell them to abort the baby. But they could, in most cases, maybe in all cases, in a late-term abortion, they do not need to kill the baby.
Yeah.
They could deliver the baby, and the baby may or may not make it, but there is a choice to kill one human being to reduce whatever the risk to the mom. Late-term abortions are risky to the mom.
Absolutely.
There is a lot that can go wrong in a late-term abortion. That is, it is not a small risk factor.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important to point that out.
Yeah.
But undoubtedly, it might be the doctor that she is seeing who is going with what he sees as the least risky option. But it could be her having more than just the concern about whatever abnormality, being concerned about those other issues. So I liked what you said also when you wrote that letter, that of the convenience factor.
Right.
And I'm not sure that you mentioned that in talking about the mindset.
Right. Yeah.
difference.
So it's a very inconvenient thing to go in for a late-term abortion, for sure. I mean, especially when you've got people that are flying to Colorado. I'm sure they're local people, but people do fly to Colorado. Colorado's a destination for late-term abortions. I believe so Massachusetts or Maryland, either one of those, maybe both of those are places where people go for late-term abortions. And then New Mexico is another place where people go for late-term abortions. There's like these kind of late-term abortion destinations. There was a documentary, it came out a couple of years ago, about late-term abortion facilities. I forget the name of the documentary. Maybe if I find it, I can put a link in the show notes.
Okay.
But it was really informative. And as a matter of fact, I kind of rewinded that video, kind of went back a little bit on it, because as they were showing the office, I noticed on the wall there was like a payment schedule, or there was like prices. And so I went back and kind of like zoomed into it because I wanted to see, what is this? And that's where I saw the $10,000 for, I think it was like 28 weeks or 30 weeks or something like that. I can't remember. But they kind of had how much it cost to do abortions at those stages. Yeah. And so, that's very telling. But you do have the convenience factor with early term abortions, where it's just more convenient to go have an abortion than to let a baby take over your body, to have your work schedule thrown off or whatever. Now, I don't mean to say that every woman that has an abortion is doing it for the sake of convenience, because it's not convenient to go to the abortion clinic and wait for 3 hours and do all that stuff. And then they're subjecting their bodies to, some pretty harsh stuff. So I don't mean to say that it's just convenient in the sense it's easy, but it is more convenient just to have your abortion one day than to raise a child for 18 years.
Right.
And we hear that a lot.
Right.
You're going to raise this baby? I don't want to raise this baby for 18 years.
Right.
What are you saying? You don't want to be inconvenienced, right? Yeah. And so my point is, with the late-term abortion thing, is that people are not coming there for the sake of convenience. They've already went through several months of the pregnancy already. Their body has already been subjected to what a woman's body goes through when she's pregnant. And so that factor is likely not there, or not as prominent in these situations. And again, I'm imagining just the faces of the women are more somber, more like, this is not something that they're doing glibly, I will say.
Right. And so I wonder if you do have a harder time convincing them. I think that is possible. Yeah. I imagine there's more fear. Talking about their mindset, they're probably more fearful because they really are afraid for their life, or for what is going to be the baby's life. Yeah. And so again, going back to that, one of the original points I made, testimony, telling stories. Right. There are women who have made it through high-risk pregnancies. Many. There are many women who have had a special needs child and could testify to the joy of that child. There's many women who have delivered a baby who is only going to live for a few minutes or maybe hours after birth, who say that time was so precious and it was worth going through the pregnancy and the sorrow to have that baby for those few hours or whatever time that they had. And so those testimonies, I think we should all know about them. And especially if this is the type of facility you're serving at, being able to tell those stories and give those women help and hope that even though this is a terrible situation, that there is even joy possible in bringing that baby, all the
testimonies
way to term.
are a powerful way for any situation that you're dealing with. If you have a corresponding testimony or story, if you have a personal testimony or testimony that you can share with somebody you know or something you've read or a video, it's just powerful because it really overcomes all of the lies that there can't be any good that comes out of this bad situation. Testimonies show that, well, God's not a respecter of persons, and if he was there with this woman in her story, and there's a positive outcome here, it brings hope, right? There can be a similar testimony in your situation.
Right. What reading that one article helped me to know and understand was, like you, I don't think I would focus on the resources so much with a later term abortion, but I might not ignore it, because if all of those reasons that I listed at the beginning of this podcast are true, then you've still got women who are conflicted, women who are being pressured by a boyfriend, women who are still in shock because they just found out that they were pregnant not long ago. And so I think using our 3 talking points are still important, especially focusing on the 2, humanity of the baby and what God has to say, and the value of that child before God.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. Well, I think that we'll wrap this episode up if you're good to go on that, Vicki.
Yeah. I mean, most people, I just want to say, most of you will not face this. There are very few that are solely late-term abortion centers. But you will, if you're in one of those destination states, you may come and meet up with women who are in a later-term abortion. And I think it is important to read these articles and to think about what we've suggested.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we'd love to hear you guys' feedback. Maybe you're listening to this podcast and you've ministered at one of these late-term abortion facilities for a long time. If you've learned some things that you can teach us, we would love to hear from you. Maybe even interview you and get some wisdom from you, because we've not been in that scenario. I mean, I've dealt with women that are further along in pregnancy, 20 weeks plus.
Right.
And I know you have too, but it's not a regular occurrence, and we're certainly not ministering at an abortion clinic that's all they do.
Right.
So we're speaking from, some knowledge, but not full knowledge of what that might look like. So if you have a unique perspective on that, we'd love to hear from you. And if you have any feedback on this episode or other episodes, please reach out to us. You can reach me, Daniel@lovelife.org. You can reach her, Vicki@lovelife.org. I also want to say, if you guys could leave us a review on whatever service you use for podcasts, we would really like to get our 1.2 stars up to 4 stars, maybe 3 stars, because our pro-abortion friends have trolled our reviews. They're still putting reviews out every once in a while. We have more reviews than any other pro-life podcast.
Yeah.
They just happen to all be 1-star reviews.
Thank you, pro-abortion people, for that.
Right. So our pro-abortion friends have really given us a lot of reviews. And if you want to have some fun, read the reviews. Well, maybe not. They're pretty nasty. But anyway, leave us a review if you have an opportunity to do that, if you like these podcasts. But until next time, God bless.
God bless you all.
Give me an outlet for love. Give me an outlet for gratitude. I know it will cost me my life, but nothing's too precious since I met you.